Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 11 of The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, Blake's poem that I have been discussing with Sophie Le Corre for months now. Today, we're covering slightly less terrain. We're only going to do the fifth memorable fancy because we both had very busy weeks, but there's a lot going on in that fifth memorable fancy of The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. So I think we'll have a lot to talk about. Don't you think, Sophie?
Yes, I think this part of the poem has a lot of psychological and religious implications.
Yeah, and I think we should just jump right into it. As always, I like to when we look at these memorable fancy portions, I like to kind of give a sense of the parallel reading of the memorable relations of Swedenborg that Blake is responding to. I had a chance to look over this last night, but I want to read just a small section from that. And essentially, what happens in the memorable relation Swedenborg is that a devil or Satan has a visit with Swedenborg, and he talks like a natural philosopher, not believing in heaven, hell, life after death, etc. And we've come to learn that the reason why he doesn't talk about these things is that in his lower dimensionality, he's forgotten that they exist, and he's actually deceived himself with his own lies. And I'll give you a taste of that with this little reading, if you don't mind, Sophie.
Okay, go on.
Okay. All this he said precisely as he had thought upon these subjects in the world, not knowing that he was then living after death, and having forgotten all that he had heard when he first entered the spiritual world. So again he replied to a question about life after death, that it was a thing of the imagination, and that perchance some effluvium arising from a buried corpse in the shape of a man, or a thing called a ghost, about which some tell stories, had introduced such a notion among men's fancies. When I heard this, I could no longer keep from laughing, and I said, Satan, you are raving mad. What are you now? Are you not now in the form of a man? Do you not talk, see, hear, walk? Recall to mind that you have lived in another world which you have forgotten, and that you are now living after death, and that you are even now talking just as you formerly did. And recollection was given him, and he remembered and was ashamed. And he cried out, I am mad. I saw heaven above, and I heard angels there uttering things ineffable. But that was when I first came here. I will now keep this in mind to tell my companions from whom I came, and perhaps they too will be ashamed as I am. And he kept repeating that he would call them madmen, but as he descended, forgetfulness expelled remembrance. And when he reached his companions, he was as mad as they, and said that what he had heard from me was madness. In this way do Satans think and talk after death. Those are called Satans who have confirmed in themselves falsities until they believe them, and those are called devils who have confirmed in themselves evils by their life. So I thought that was kind of interesting that people are entities that inhabit lower realms. The reason why they make arguments against God and the afterlife is that they lose the capacity to remember. So, and and in this portion of the marriage of heaven and hell, we're going to see a different sort of dynamic go on between a devil and an angel. And we might be able to we'll probably compare and contrast that as we go. Um, Before we jump into it, is there anything else that you'd like to say, Sophie?
No, I would like to read Blake's poem.
Sure. Should we do? Why don't we go do a paragraph at a time since it's short? Is that okay?
Yes,
And
we
maybe
could
can
do
you read the
this.
first? Can you do the first paragraph for us?
Okay. A memorable fancy. Once I saw a devil in a flame of fire, who arose before an angel that sat on a cloud. And the devil uttered these words: the worship of God is honoring his gifts in other men, each according to his genius, and loving the greatest man best. Those who envy or calumniate great men hate God, for there is no God.
No other God, yes.
No
And I
other
had to
God,
look,
sorry.
no other God. Yeah, I had to look up this word. I didn't actually know what this word calumniate meant. I had to look it up. To utter
Oh,
maliciously false statements, charges, or imputations about, to injure the reputation by calumny. I
yes,
mean, you can kind of gather from the context, but I just want to put that out there.
it's more common in French, I think. There is the word calumny, and it's very commonly used when we talk about politics. Uh,
Ah,
because
yeah, no, what,
it is very often that people say false things about politicians, or they uh, misinterpret what they say in the journalists, for instance. They may misinterpret what a politician says, and the politician is going to accuse the journalist of calumny.
yeah, calumny is, I think, one that I hear a little bit more often than calumniate. It's interesting. My Google Word doc had a little blue line under it saying like, "Are you sure you want to use this word?" So it's calumniate is that kind of, it's pretty rare in English now. So much so that the Google AI is like saying, "Hey, there's a better choice here." So, I mean, what's interesting here is we have the devil making a case that men are to be loved in accordance with their genius. I mean, we see that this is pretty antithetical to the Christian message already.
Yes,
That, you
but
know,
maybe not, because uh, it seems to be contradictory with the Christian message, but it is not sure, because it depends how you look at what man is. And if you think of man as man was made at from the image of God. And if you think about this, man is called to live like Jesus Christ did. And the if you think that the genius or the great men, if you think of them as human beings who fulfilled their vocation as human being, um, then you would say that they accomplish God's will in their life, in their lives.
so yes, this is going to raise a lot of interesting questions about the Imago Dei, what exactly that is, what it means for man's vocation, are there vocations? Is genius a vocation outside of the discipleship of Christ? I mean, if you're, can you be a genius and a disciple of Christ at the same time? Uh,
If you take the concept of individuation, which Jung elaborated, but he did not elaborate it by himself. He was inspired by generations of thinkers, and even the Bible, because the Bible, there is a way of interpreting the religious text, and not only the Bible, but all the religious texts from the different religions, and there is a way of interpreting them as describing this process of individuation. And individuation would mean realizing our we use the word calling, but or the Imago Dei, like you said, realizing this in our lives would be the purpose of human life. So this is a way of interpreting the religious text, but there are other ways. But if you adopt this way of interpreting them, then it's not contradictory with these religious texts.
Well, maybe that's the case. I mean, there's still I don't want to split too many hairs over this, but there's still the case of honoring these men as they fulfill their vocation of genius. I don't know how much honor we are to give to men of genius. What we start doing, perhaps that was what men of genius ought to do, and they were given that genius as part of their as part of the Imago Dei. The question is, are we turning them into false idols if we start to honor them based on their achievements with that genius? And I think it's a pretty dangerous line to toe.
Yes, I've been reading. I've already talked about the philosopher Nikolai Berdyaev, who was a Christian Orthodox philosopher, and he wrote about this problem of the vocation or the calling of genius in opposition to the calling of sainthood. And he said that it were two different vocations, but in his opinion, both were important from the religious perspective. And he talked about the poet, the Russian poet Pushkin, and he made the arguments that perhaps it was better for Pushkin to be a genius than a saint, that he realized his vocation as being a poetic genius, and he would not have realized it if he became a saint. And Berdyaev, his conception of religion, he thinks that the notion of creation is a religious notion in his religious philosophy, that he has an apocalyptic view of Christianity, and so in his mind,
so did Jesus.
So in his mind, Christianity is not only about redemption, and it's also about creation.
Oh yeah, and I mean, look, what isn't Christianity about? I mean, it's not only about creation, but also the destruction of the satanic creation that takes root amongst gods. I don't even know if you could call it a satanic creation, but a satanic matrix or something of that nature, a facsimile, a maze. So yeah, it's all there. It's all there. Well, how about can we go to the next paragraph and keep in mind these other concepts that we've talked about? All right. The angel, hearing this, became almost blue, but mastering himself, he grew yellow and at last white, pink, and smiling, and then replied, "Thou idolater," gosh, I can't talk this morning. "Thou idolater, is not God one? And is not he visible in Jesus Christ? And has not Jesus Christ given his sanction to the law of 10 commandments? And are not all other men fools, sinners, and nothings?" I'm going to say it one more time because I stumbled. The angel, hearing this, became almost blue, but mastering himself, he grew yellow and at last white, pink, and smiling, and then replied, "Thou idolater, is not God one? And is not he visible in Jesus Christ? And has not Jesus Christ given his sanction to the law of 10 commandments? And are not all other men fools, sinners, and nothings?" So I'm more sympathetic to this perspective. I thought first thing I wanted to point out here that I thought was interesting is wondering if there was some sort of color code in play, because the angel that hears Satan say this, he goes blue, then yellow, then white, pink. There might be something deeper there as far as colors. I mean, it's just, there is this expression in English. I don't know if you have it in French, where you argue with someone until your face turns blue. And I think generally it's supposed to imply that you are yelling and screaming so much that there's a deprivation of oxygen. And so the angel is, a person who would be blue in the face would eventually be pallid and then come back to life. But it's interesting that even hearing Satan say these things turned the angel blue, and took him a second to master himself and get back to a healthy smile. Do you have this expression in French?
I don't know.
Have you ever heard it before? We argued till I was blue in the face, or something of
No,
that expression like that.
I don't think we say it this way. There are maybe other expressions, but not this one.
Did you have any thoughts on the colors that he was using besides that?
No, I haven't, but maybe I can. I have opened the book which I read as a preparation for this podcast, which is Blake Jung and the Collective Unconscious, and I'm at the right paragraph, so perhaps I can have more information about the metaphors of the colors.
Yeah, and why do you have it?
Oh,
do you have
okay.
it ready?
I have found it.
Okay.
As heat applied to the alchemical vessel causes the contents to undergo a series of changes characterized by specific colors, so
Right.
the pressure which the angel must undergo affects a transformation. Whether he will or no, the angel takes into himself some of that fierce energetic force which must affect the status of his conventional belief. The angel becomes volatile, active and participating, and when he speaks out for the traditional morality supposedly sanctioned by Jesus, it is the last proud rallying cry in defense of a citadel which he knows is already falling. So it seems that an alchemical transformation is occurring.
Yeah, I suspected there was. It's just like I have a hard time getting my mind around exactly what alchemy and the philosopher's stone and all this stuff really is, and I even look at it a lot. But I know colors are important to it, especially when talking about metals or even the spiritual aspects of things. So yeah. But I guess we'll get into this whole thing about how the angel knows it's losing the argument. We'll get into whether or not the angel really loses the argument. But he says, find it interesting. He says, thy idolater, is not God one? So we obviously have a Trinity conversation coming up here. And he says, and is not he visible in Jesus Christ? So it almost, oh, sorry, I bumped the microphone. It almost, I'm curious, the notion of the Trinity that Blake is, or the angel through Blake is articulating here. It's almost like have you ever read that mathematical fairy tale called Flatland? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where there's like it's like about, it was by a mathematician. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I wonder if it's about the different dimensions. Is it?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is it's by Edwin Abbott or something like that. But in Flatland, he talks about how there's like a 2-dimensional world, and then a 3-dimensional something from the 3rd dimension enters into the 2nd dimensional world. But the way that the inhabitants and the denizens of Flatland experience the 3D entity is they see it in slices, in 2D slices. So it's almost like the way that he's portraying the God here is that he's like almost like this 3-dimensional object that's intruding into our 2-dimensional world. Or if we were we are in a 3-dimensional world, and God is a 4-dimensional object intruding into our 3-dimensional world, and it is the slice we see is Jesus Christ. And I find that sort of interesting, but problematic, obviously, at the same time. Did you have any thoughts on this?
I haven't. No, I haven't thought about this as a mathematical dimension problem. I haven't thought much about this sentence.
It's okay. It's funny as I can. I can hear in the background. I think I can hear in the background one of our previous podcasts or something. I don't think the microphone will be picking it up. It's very low, and I have my volume down. You don't by chance have a file playing on your computer, do you?
No.
Oh, it's probably mine. Where is it sound coming from?
I'm closing all the other tabs on my browser, but I already muted the sound, so
Yeah.
I don't think it's this.
Well, I don't. It's so faint. I don't think anyone will hear it. It's really faint. Anyhow, I'm just curious where it's coming from. So yeah, and I really like this ending here. This is what I was trying to argue in the first paragraph. And are not all other men fools, sinners, and nothings? That's how I see it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't have contempt for humanity. It's not like I don't, but I understand that I'm nobody. I understand that I'm a sinner. I understand I'm a fool, and I understand that everyone else is too. Even like I'm reading James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake right now. It's supposed to be like one of the best pieces of literature ever. Joyce, to me, is also a full sinner into nothing, despite the fact that he wrote Finnegan's Wake. I mean, I guess I'd like to have a conversation with him, but I wouldn't. I don't think I'd ever honor him. And I don't think, or Blake. I don't think I really would ever honor Blake. Like, I think Blake is all mixed up. What do you think about that?
It makes me think again about Nikolai Berdyaev, because he used to be a Marxist when he was young, and when he became a Christian, he used some Marxist concepts in order to define spiritual classes, because Marx defined social classes, and so in his mind there were two spiritual classes which were bourgeois bourgeois spiritual bourgeoisie and spiritual aristocracy. And these are not the same as the social classes, which means people who are workers as a social classes who are workers can be in the spiritual sphere aristocrats, and vice versa. People who are aristocrats in the social sense may have a bourgeois spirit mindset. And what he means by this is that in his opinion most people were searching for having a better social position. So the bourgeois mindset is the one where you try to get to climb the ladder of society, and you there is the concept of meritocracy. So your success depends on your hard work and your intelligence, and so this is the bourgeois mindset. And the aristocratic mindset is more similar to the poetic genius of William Blake, which means it's a mindset of creation and of you receive gifts and you don't deserve them, and your life purpose is to use your gifts, to spend them with, and to create, to make your life a work of art, like Nietzsche and other thinkers said.
Right. By the way, I found the source of that mystery audio. Apparently, when I before we started, I deleted our last podcast, but it only deleted my vocal track. So I was recording over what we had done, and I could hear you in the background, and it had not deleted your vocal track. So I was getting two Sophies, but I muted that, so we're all good to go now.
Okay.
Yeah. Learn something new every day. Would you read this next paragraph for us?
Yes. The devil answered, "Brave fool, immortal with wit, yet shall not his folly be beaten out of him. If Jesus Christ is the greatest man, you ought to love him in the greatest degree. Now, he has given his sanction to the law of 10 commandments. Did he not mock at the Sabbath, and so mock the Sabbath's God, murder those who were murdered because of him, turn away the law from the woman taken in adultery, steal the labor of others to support him, bear false witness when he omitted making a defense before Pilate, covet when he prayed for his disciples, and when he beat them, shake off the dust of their feet against such as refuse to lodge them? I tell you, no virtue can exist without breaking these 10 commandments. Jesus was all virtue and acted from impulse, not from rules."
All right. This is going to take some time to break down.
Yes.
Okay. Before we even get into any of this, let's just have a quick review of what the 10 Commandments are. All right. So here
Yes.
they are. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have strange gods before me. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember to keep holy the Lord's day. Honor thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. All right. And there's slightly different wordings and different translations, but that's basically the gist. Okay. So, and this is a huge conversation within Christian theological circles about whether or not Christ, if the Old Testament law is still in effect, or if Christ uh, paid the ultimate sacrifice to mitigate all those Old Testament laws, or if those laws are still in effect and we're still to live by them. Da 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 da. So if you're not deeply connected to Christianity, I would think that this the devil would be like, you'd be like, yeah, this devil's making some good points, but let's break it down. Okay. All right. He says, did he not mock at the Sabbath and so mock the Sabbath's God? Okay. So we have different tones about the Sabbath in uh in in the Old and New Testament. I'll give you just a little flavor of how, they differ. So like Exodus 35:2. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day there shall be to you an holy day, a Sabbath of rest to the Lord. Whosoever doeth work therein shall be put to death. Then you have Matthew 12:11 through 12. And he said unto them, what man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold on it and lift it out? And we can do this all day long, There's a famous one, Mark 2:27 through 28. And he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Versus, yeah, you get the idea, right? You get the idea is that Jesus is making, is kind of redefining or making exceptions. But let's first address this. Is he mocking the Sabbath? Is he mocking God? So, like an example, Jesus uses the example of healing or helping someone on the Sabbath day. Is this mocking God?
Yes. I
You think?
wonder. I think Blake is specific here when he talks about the Sabbath God. And when you use an adjective with the word God, maybe what this seems to indicate that it's not, it's also an idol, that it's not God, it's the Sabbath God. So
Right.
I wonder if it's intentional from Blake's writing that what he's saying is Jesus is mocking an idol, which who the priest from his time, what's their name in English,
The Pharisees.
the Pharisees, yes, adored. And maybe it's not God, but it's an idol.
Well, I mean, I can understand that, but at the same time, I think it's quite clear from the scriptures that that Sabbaths are important. Uh, it's but we do get into this question about whether or not mankind got to the point where he turned the law into an idol and needed to have a more nuanced understanding of what these things are. I I don't get the sense that Jesus mocked the Sabbath at all. I mean, he frequently gave sermons
Yes.
on the I guess gave sermons on the Sabbath, and I don't think there's anything that's mocking God.
No,
And
but
and
now that I think about it, I think one of the sentence Jesus said about the Sabbath is actually similar to what Blake just said, because he said that the Sabbath was not man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath was made for man.
right,
And it
right,
seems that Jesus is putting man before the religious prescriptions.
right. Yeah, it's all about perspective. I think in a way, the Sabbath was made for man, was to say, hey, like, look, chill out. This is good for you to do. Um, we have some other passages, Colossians 2:16. Although this is Paul, let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day or the new moon or the Sabbath days. Um, I think the general sense is, at least at this stage, is that the spirituality shouldn't be contained to one day alone, one day of the week alone. That should be all pervasive. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if Jesus was out there saying, "No, now you're going to go. You're going to do nothing but work on the Sabbath day, and you're not going to have Sabbaths anymore." But I think he was trying to say, like, you're misunderstanding the spirit of the law. We can still help people and not mock God on the Sabbath. That's how I understood it. And I think this devil is doing what a devil should do, is twisting the scripture and twisting our understanding, which, that's what these devils are supposed to do. And it only gets worse.
Yes, but if you interpret it the way I interpreted it, it is not inconsistent with Jesus' message. If you interpret it as Jesus saying that the Pharisees adored an idol, which was the Sabbath god, and they put the religious rules before man. So
Yeah.
maybe that we can interpret it this way.
Yeah. No, I don't really have a problem with it. But so this next one I thought was so lame. Murder those who were murdered because of him. So apparently, because Jesus's disciples chose to remain faithful to him after his resurrection, it is somehow Jesus is somehow responsible for the murder of his disciples. Like, as if these individuals didn't have the free will to choose to be disciples of Christ. I don't know how he's going to impute murder onto his disciples, unless he's trying to say that Jesus was some kind of charlatan and had brainwashed his disciples. But if he's the true God, I mean, it's truly their choice for the truth, and they're willing to die for that.
Yes.
So how could Jesus be responsible for their murder? That's the people that murdered the disciples are the people that murdered the disciples. Primarily the Romans, and I don't know the exact way that every disciple died off the top of my head, and what is and all, but there are all sorts of disciples of Christ throughout the centuries that have been murdered in different ways. Some were by the Romans, some were by different sects within Christianity. I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, unbelievers. So I don't get this. I don't get this is such a weak argument. I think this argument's terrible.
Yes, I understand it because Jesus knew that his disciples and the first believers, the first Christian believers, would be persecuted. And
Oh, that's true. If he would have had foreknowledge of that at some point. This gets into interesting questions again about the Trinity and how much Jesus did know. I mean, ultimately, he in Revelation, John has a vision of Jesus, and the persecution of the saints is told to John then. But I think the book of Revelation happened. The book of Revelation was an experience that happened after Jesus had ascended. So maybe Jesus got that knowledge after he had already ascended.
no, because during his life, his earthly life, he talks. I don't have the exact passage. I don't know them by heart, but he warned them that they would be persecuted.
Oh yeah.
Especially the two disciples who were very who wanted to be on his right and left, who wanted the first place in the kingdom, and he said that they would share his trials, and that they would die like himself.
Yeah. Let's see.
What
John 15:19-20. If you were the world would love you as its own. But because you're not of the world, but I choose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they keep my word, they will also keep yours. Yeah.
So
So
I think that's what Blake means, is that he knew that they would be persecuted, but he did not do anything to prevent this.
because Christ knew that that people that followed him would meet a similar fate in some instances, he is ultimately responsible for their murder. So let's take it one step further. If precognition of an event ascribes the ethical action to you, then let's just talk about God, not Jesus. Okay, let's just talk about God. Is God himself, because he numbers the days of every man, does God murder every human? Is that the logic we're supposed to get here? Because God has not bestowed immortality upon mortal men, that they first have to believe in Christ and die or experience special rapture events. Is the logic here that because God knows that all men will die, that God is nothing but a murderer?
Yes,
I mean, just
this is a deep religious question, I think. The meaning of suffering and the meaning of death.
I mean, can you ascribe murder to the creator of everything? I mean, there would be nothing if he had not created it. So who are we to go and ascribe murder to that being, because from our perspective our mortal lives come to an end? We have no idea what I mean, we have an idea as the result of revelation through the Bible, but outside of that, we don't have any idea of what happens outside of just going through this phase known as life. So I don't know. I mean, it's like if someone if someone makes a car and that car is a great car and it runs for 50 years, if you take really good care of it or something like that, right? There's still people who, you go to a car show, you got guys still driving around in nice cars from like the 1960s or and 50s or even earlier. But if that car should break down one day, do you then say, oh, this, like, the person that made this car also murdered this car or also destroyed this car? I don't think you would say that. You'll go, oh man, GM destroyed this car. It only took 50 years to do it. I don't think it works that way. There would be no car. There would be no person if there wasn't a creator in the first place. So you wouldn't call them a murderer. And Jesus is God, so you wouldn't call them a murderer. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand this, but there are passages from the Old Testament which are very difficult to interpret, especially.
Well, God does kill some people in the Old Testament.
Yes.
He does. And he commands people to kill other people.
Yes. And it's difficult to read these passages from the point of view of a Christian, because
no, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Because Jesus gave painted a picture of his father as a loving father. And when you read the Old Testament and you see all these people being murdered and the deluge and all the punishments.
Well, this assumes that these people, see, this is the thing that this gets in a larger theological conversation, but this assumes that these people were just people, right? Like, people go, oh, how could God flood the earth? Da 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 da. Well, they assume it's just like, oh, how could he just flood the earth and kill all those wicked people? And there was only like 8 people on the ark or whatever. I don't forget how many there were. I mean, we're told in Genesis 6 that there is a mixture of fallen angel and human that creates these monstrosities, right? The conditions that precipitated the flood could have been way more not as if vice wasn't enough, but could have been way more than just degeneracy. There could be, it likely was a very different world with genetic corruption. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about?
We talked about a movie about the flood.
Was it Noah? We talked about
Noah, yes, I've seen this movie, and I think it was interesting because the problem that God is facing in the Bible, he put this problem in the mind of Noah himself. So it was Noah who was faced with this question: should humanity be erased from the earth or not? And I think it was interesting that we see a human being being faced with this divine question, and maybe it gives an idea of what God was thinking during this episode.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, I don't think God's foreknowledge allows him to be accused of murder. finite creations have a natural teleology in them, and that ultimately they're made for destruction. And I suppose all of that could have been circumvented if we had not fallen in the Garden of Eden, right? If Adam and Eve had not eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, then there wouldn't be mortality and death in the world. But then the question, so that we push it back further. So we push it back further is, well, then why did God even allow for that tree to be there? If so, I mean, really, we chose, if we're going to blame anyone for death in the world, the blame is on our original parents and Adam and Eve, unless you want to say that it's God's fault for putting the tree in the garden that they would eat of and die and suffer the penalty of death from. And I mean, so then we got to get into a question about why did God put that tree there to begin with? Do you know why? Because
You want to know?
I mean, I have some guesses. I'm just curious if you figured it out. I don't think I've ever asked you.
Yes, I've read about it, especially in the book. I've read from Nikolai Berdyaev and from the Christian theologian I already talked about in one of our previous podcasts.
Okay, refresh my memory. My mind can only hold so much.
Yes, so I have the book here. Yes, this one. It's Paul Evdokimov, and it's Dostoevsky and the Problem of Evil. So I've summarized the passage in which he's talking about Dostoevsky's short story, The Dream of the Ridiculous Man, which we also studied together. And so this book is about the problem of evil, and Evdokimov was very much influenced by Dostoevsky and Berdyaev. So Berdyaev's opinion is that the problem of evil is the problem of freedom actually. And that if, in his opinion, freedom is the most fundamental thing that exists. And if that human beings are made for freedom, but there are two kinds of freedoms. There is the arbitrary freedom and the true freedom. But in order to experience the true freedom, you also have to experience the arbitrary freedom. And so the presence of the tree is this is the representation of human freedom, and human beings wouldn't have had consciousness if they did not have this first arbitrary freedom, which would lead them to their fall. But if they didn't have this, they would have been non-conscious beings.
Right. Like, so, I mean, is this a preferable state of affairs if God had made these robots?
It's what happens in Brave New World.
Right.
In Brave New World, you have this society where people don't have freedom, so they cannot commit evil. but they remain like little children. They don't develop an individual consciousness.
I would say they're worse than children. They may have, you know, yeah. I mean, they're pretty pathetic creations. So you remove the choice and the freedom, and you get these factory cutouts. Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting because it seems it raises. We have a lot going on in the world. It raises very interesting questions about how the erosion of choice is occurring, and how there are certain parties that are very interested in that erosion of choice, but it may be the very thing that makes humanity so special. So, anyhow, we should move on here because, gosh, we could talk forever about this subject, but yeah, I'm still not buying this that Jesus murdered his followers line. But we've definitely opened up a can of worms. What about this next one? Turn away the law from the woman taken in adultery, steal the labor of others to support him. Okay. He didn't turn away the law from the woman, the adulterous woman. He turned away the death penalty. Okay. And he said to her, go and sin no more. So he essentially is just telling her to reform and to repent, but the laws are still in action. Unless you want to say the fact that he didn't join in on a stoning or allow them to stone her, by removing that punishment, you ultimately remove the law. I don't think that's the case. I think the law can still be in place, but you don't necessarily have to be on the end of the punishment. What do you think about that?
In my opinion, Blake is saying that the death punishment is part of the law, and if you don't perform the death sentence, then you are not obeying to the law.
Well, I understand what Blake's saying through this mouth of this devil, but you can have all sorts of laws. You can have a law, okay? For instance, okay, in America, it's illegal to kill someone, okay? But depending on the state you're in, and like the physical state, like versus, say, Texas versus Massachusetts, or depending on your state of consciousness, or how was it premeditated? Was it spontaneous? There are different sorts of punishments for this. Some instances will be capital punishment. Other instances will be life in prison. Some people don't even spend their entire lives in prison. Sometimes they're let out on parole. So I think you can still have a law that has different punishments, but some people would argue that you can't, especially people who have had loved ones murdered or something like that. But I'm not sure I'm buying this thing that the law goes away if you take away the most extreme punishment. I mean, if we were to think that way, I mean, ultimately Jesus is offering himself up as the sacrificial lamb, because we're prior to Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection, all of us would be facing a death row sentence, right? But because of what Jesus has done, his mere act of incarnation and resurrection takes away the penalty of death for those who believe in him. But those who don't believe in him still must suffer a type of penalty after death. Now we can get into questions about, is there going to be like another opportunity for people to, when you get into the book of Revelation and judging and things like that, sometimes things can get a little complicated. But I mean, if you're gonna argue that him taking away the death sentence from this woman takes away all the law, then I think you have to also argue the fact that Jesus died and resurrected also does away with all the law, because it takes away the death penalty for everyone who naturally deserved it as a result of the genetic transmission of sin from Adam and Eve. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure Blake thought as deeply as you just did. I think he was talking about the way the Pharisees interpreted the law, and that Jesus did not think like the Pharisees.
Well, I have to say the Pharisees weren't even, or whoever. I'd have to go in I don't know if it was the Pharisees or just a mob or whoever. The Pharisees weren't even properly applying the law, because the law, it takes two to tango. A woman can't have adultery by herself, so she must have had adultery with a man as well. So if the law was to be fairly applied, a man and a woman should have been brought before him to be stoned.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We would have to read the Jewish law in order to be sure of this. But I've read some of it in I think it's in the same chapter as the Ten Commandments. But when Moses gave the Ten Commandments, he also gave a very long list of social rules, rules to organize life within the Hebrew people, and I would not be surprised if some of these laws were misogynist.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, they're very severe. It was very severe. I mean, they're stoning for all sorts of things, stoning for stealing. It wasn't just adultery. I'd have to go and look it all up. But anywho, that's what I have to say about that. I don't know if I have anything else to say about that. I think this whole thing, stealing the labor of others to support him, Jesus didn't steal. People may have given him his disciples things, but is there any account of Jesus ever steal? When did Jesus steal?
He told his disciples that they could eat from I have to find the right passage.
Where did Jesus say condone stealing?
Yes.
No.
Yes, I'm going to give you that. Yeah, and it was on Sabbath day. Oh, okay. I have found it. It's Matthew 12:1. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw him, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath."
What? Wait, so stealing is lawful the other days of the week, or what?
No.
I see what they're saying. It's just they're doing something that's not lawful and it's on the Sabbath day.
Yes. And Jesus replied, "Have you not read what David said when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to eat, but only for the priests. Or haven't you heard in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and yet are innocent? But I will tell you something greater, that the temple is here. For if only you had known the meaning of 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath."
Yeah. So so I'm trying to understand what the infraction is here. Is it stealing, or is it eating on the Sabbath day,
Well, actually, the
or
corn
harvesting? Is
the
it
corn
what's the problem here?
the corn was not theirs. It was from an agriculture. How do you say this in English? A farmer, yes. They stole corn from a farmer because they did not sow the corn. It was the work of somebody else.
I don't think there's
Not sure what's the word. The word. Sorry, they did not plant the corn, and it was on the field of somebody.
I see. This isn't. So I don't think stealing is the issue, because in the Bible there's talk about how you are to kind of leave, not to harvest everything, because there will be those who come through who will be hungry, and you want to leave a little behind for them. I have to find, and in Deuteronomy 23, it says, "If you enter your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat all the grapes you want, but do not put any in your basket. If you enter your neighbor's grain field, you may pick kernels with your hands, but you must not put a sickle to his standing grain." So I don't I don't think the issue here, I don't think there's an issue here of stealing.
Yes, maybe it's the way Blake is interpreting it as a 18th century man, because the moral consciousness in the 18th century in England in the 18th and beginning of 19th century was very different from the Hebrew customs. I didn't know I was not aware of what you just said, that Hebrew people were saying that it was not stealing to eat from somebody else culture fields, that they were more generous than in our contemporary culture.
Well, yeah, I have to find the right verse. Keep going. Yeah, here, Leviticus 23:22, I believe is. And when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not make clean riddance of the corners of thy field when thou reapest, neither shalt thou gather any gleaning of thy harvest. Thou shalt leave them unto the poor and to the stranger. I am the Lord your God. So I don't see any. They aren't stealing in Matthew 12:1. The only issue they could be accused of would be whether or not by plucking the grain, if they are doing work, and therefore going back to the original charge of mocking the Sabbath God by doing work. But Jesus responds to him and he says, "Oh, look, the priests would eat the showbread and on the Sabbath day, like da 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 da. This is you're missing the point. You're missing the point." And then goes into a deeper thing about the temple and all that stuff. That would take a while to undo, but I'm not. As far as stealing, Jesus did not steal.
Yes, I agree with you. If we take the Jewish the moral code of the Jewish people from Jesus' time, it was probably not stealing. But from Blake's point of view, as an Englishman from the 18th century, it was stealing.
Well, he's still claiming knowledge of the Bible.
I'm not sure that's what he's doing here, and maybe that's yes. What I understand from this poem, since we started studying it, I don't think Blake is trying to be a theologian and a faithful interpreter of the religious text. I think he's talking about something else.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I agree and disagree at the same time. I think it's both. It's working on a couple levels. All right. Bear false witness when he admitted making a defense before Pilate. This is absurd. He didn't bear false witness. First of all, you have to bear false witness against someone else, okay? Against your neighbor. Jesus didn't accuse anyone of anything. And wait, his silence is like, well, they asked him, are you a king? He's, oh, that's what you say I am. He just, and then he goes on to say, my kingdom is not of this world. So I don't think he's bearing false witness. He didn't accuse anyone of anything.
Yes, but he
didn't lie. He didn't lie. He said his kingdom was not of this world.
Yes, but he did not really say the truth either, because if he said the truth, that he was innocent from what the Pharisees accused them, he need not say the truth. He did not defend himself, so he did not say what he should have. He did not answer Pilate's question, because if he said the truth, he would have said, no, what the Pharisees said about me is wrong. I've never wanted to become a political leader. I've never wanted to become a king. I've never wanted to break the how can I say?
He calls himself the truth. He tells the truth. He says, Pilate therefore said unto him, art thou a king then? Jesus answered, thou sayest I am a king. To this end was I born. And for this cause come I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice.
Yes.
Pilate said unto him, what is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews and saith unto them, I find in him no fault at all.
Yes, I think.
I mean, what is Jesus omitting? He's saying he's bearing witness to the truth, and that he's got a kingdom of another world. I detect no lies in any of this.
Yes, from the religious point of view, you're right. But I think from Blake's point of view, he's thinking more about the legal point of view.
We lawyers are amazing people.
And from the legal point of view, he did not really understand. He did not really answer Pilate's question.
Well, and this is complicated because he couldn't answer it to the satisfaction because he had to put himself into a position to be crucified so that he could ultimately I mean, look, it's a very difficult needle he had to thread, right? He had to there's an outcome that had to happen, and the outcome that had to happen was that he had to be crucified to die for humanity. I mean, for all this, Jesus could have just like you know, come down from the cross as well, right? Or like, he could have run away and not been martyred and crucified in this way, but he had to do it that way in order to save everybody from the conviction of the law. So,
Yes, I think
yeah,
Blake.
sure he could have been more. Sure, he could have satisfied the legalese of his time, and he could have done this, and he could have done that, and he could have done, but he ultimately had to be crucified, and he knew that.
Yes, I don't think that's what Blake is contradicting. I think Blake's point of view is that Jesus did not defend himself from the legal point of view, and as a consequence, he was an innocent victim of the law, not the religious law, but the trial he faced.
All right. All right. It's just we're having some clashing perspectives here. Not necessarily between you and me, but me and Blake. But all right. So covet when he prayed for his disciples. What was he coveting? What's this about?
Oh, I have to search for the translation of coveting.
Oh, this means like it means like you're envying.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Did Jesus condone coveting?
I think we have to read the passage when he prayed for his disciples. I think it's before he was condemned to death.
Where does that happen? I should have.
Was it in the
John 17, 6 through 26. Let's see what this says. Oh, here we go. I have manifested your name to the men whom you have given me out of the world. They were yours. You gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they have known that all things which you have given me are from you, for I have given to them the words which you have given me. And they have received them and have known surely that I came forth from you, and they have believed that you sent me. I pray for them. I do not pray for the world, but for those whom you have given me, and for they are yours. And all mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I am glorified in them. Now I am no longer in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to you, Holy Father, keep through your name those whom you have given me, that they may be one as we are. While I was with them in the world, I kept them in your name. Those whom you gave me I have kept, and none of them lost except the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. But now I come to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I also have sent them into the world. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they also may be sanctified by the truth. I do not pray for these alone, but also those who will believe in me through their word, that they may be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that you sent me. and the glory which you gave me, I have given them, that they may be one, just as we are one, I and them, and you and me, that they may be perfect in one, and that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them as you have loved me. Father, I desire that they also, whom you gave me, may be with me where I am, that they may behold my glory which you have given me. For you loved me before the foundation of the world. O righteous Father, the world has not known you, but I have known you, and these have known that you sent me. And I have declared to them your name, and will declare it. The love with which you love me may be in them, and I in them. This is not covetousness. This is not coveting.
Yes, I don't
this is
really
wanting people to be one with God and to be spared from the evil one. That's not coveting.
Yes, I haven't understood what Blake meant. I think he must have a reason for saying this, but I still haven't understood.
Well, there's a part about dusting off their feet, which is a whole other dusting off feet Bible. KJV. That's Matthew 10. And whosoever shall not receive you nor hear your words when ye depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust of your feet. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. I mean, he's just saying, like, don't let it get you down, because that city's going to be destroyed anyway. Get out of there. Unless you want to say, like, God's judgment upon cities is somehow a mark of his covetousness. You know, if you want to say, oh, God covets that every human soul should be saved, or that everyone should come to a salvific knowledge of the word, this is just twisting. I don't think this is covetousness.
Yes, I don't. I haven't understood why he talks about covetousness.
Well, we'll see about that. I tell you, no virtue can exist without breaking these 10 commandments. Jesus was all virtue and acted from impulse, not from rules. Now, I don't know if I disagree with this. I mean, Jesus was perfect, so there was no distinction. I agree that Jesus was all virtue and that he wasn't acting from rules alone. Did he use the rules to illustrate how we ought to be and to not get caught up in the rules? Yes. But yeah, so I guess I would agree on this point, but I wouldn't use it to subvert the 10 commandments. And say that every human being ought to act from virtue. I mean, human beings should not. I mean, impulse. Jesus wasn't a human being. He was a mixture of God and man. So to go and say, oh, well, Jesus acted from impulse, therefore all men should. No, men are not Jesus. Jesus was not a man. He was a God man. So Jesus acting on his impulsive virtue is very different from men acting on their virtue. And perhaps this is why the rules don't necessarily apply to Christ in the same way that they may apply to men. Is that they're not, it's like applying the rules of of law to a child. Like it's not the intended target, you know?
The way I interpret it is, I think Blake is very similar to Nietzsche again. And I've read, I don't remember where book it is from, but I've read Nietzsche saying that his operation of destruction of morality was in fact in order to build another form of morality. And I think both Blake and Nietzsche are defending, like I said before, an aristocratic morality. And the aristocratic morality is based on virtues. And so the virtues like courage or generosity and these kind of values are implemented in life not by following rules but by impulses. It's the character of the knight in the Middle Ages. The knight in the Middle Ages, he was acting on impulses, but he was heroic at the same time. And I thought about something else which was important about this notion of virtue. I had something very important to say, and I think I just forget it.
Well, I'll go ahead and read the next little bit. I'm going to read the last part and the note together. And if it comes back to you, let me know. Okay. When he had so spoken, I beheld the angel who stretched out his arms, embracing the flame of fire, and he was consumed and arose as Elijah. Note, this angel, who's now become a devil, is my particular friend. We often read the Bible together in its infernal or diabolical sense, which the world shall have if they behave well. I have also the Bible of hell, which the world shall have whether they will or no. One law for the lion and ox is oppression. All right. So who?
Yes.
Just a little. Do you recall what you were going to say?
No, but the last sentence is confirming my interpretation about the aristocratic morality of William Blake. That like we said before, the lion represents the aristocratic mindset, whereas the ox would represent the bourgeois mindset.
See, the way I read that was the different way. You know, the lion. Oftentimes, Satan is portrayed as a lion in the Bible, and the ox is kind of like a sacrificial offering. So, kind of like the Christian perspective, and
yes,
having laws for lions and oxes. One law, like I was saying earlier, the reason why Satan is fighting against this so much is that he feels oppressed by the biblical laws.
Oh, yes, I know what I wanted to say. It's I've been watching Dr. House MD TV series again recently. I've already watched it before in the past. And his character, he would represent the lion kind of morality because he does not obey the rules of the hospital he works for, but he obeys his own moral code. And but actually he displays virtue in his actions, even if he's not obeying the laws. And I think that's an interesting part of this series because It's really about morality and virtue. And it poses very, very interesting ethical questions.
Certainly does.
And do you mind? I have, if I read some notes, I have posted on our document. I don't know if you have read them.
No, I've been looking at a different document, so go ahead.
Well, maybe I will not read everything, but I will try to read the parts which are interesting. These are excerpts from Blake Young and the Collective Unconscious by June Singer. And the author said, the devil sees the symbol of Jesus in a quite different light than does the angel. To the angel, whose law is reason, one who breaks the law must indeed forsake the way of goodness. But the Jesus described by the devil has a dark side, as well as a light side. He is the sanctifier of the law and the abrogator of the law. Think not that I am come to destroy the law of the prophets. I am not come to destroy but fulfill. Blake's devil points out that Jesus supplies that element which a Christianity of strict dogma requires, the awareness of another kind of law, which may at times supersede the collective compact. It is the law that recognizes the unique spark of divinity within the individual, which may present itself as impulse or as desire. Jesus' virtue, the devil shows, was that he acted from impulse and not from rules. Virtue, as Blake used the word, was the individual natural aspect of man expressing itself freely and thus uniquely. In Jesus Christ as fulfiller of the law and Jesus Christ as lawbreaker, a bridge is formed upon which two contraries represented by angel and devil can approach one another. Out of their intimate confrontation arise the imagination and the vision which make it possible to relate reason and restraint to energy and desire. So yes, I've read that. It made me think also about Kierkegaard's stages, the religious stages versus the ethical stages. And I thought also about Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, where the protagonist, Raskolnikov, is trying to find his own moral code as opposed to the collective systems of morality. And I have another excerpt from Blake Young and the Collective Unconscious. Thus, it is that after his conversion, the angel is able to accept the principle that discipline need not to be a negative force from outside the individual, imposing, stultifying, and inhibiting rules. He can recognize that the moment we cease to conform to external discipline, in that moment life imposes upon us the necessity of conforming to a far more rigorous discipline, the self-discipline upon which individuation depends. The discipline which has its origins in the individual nature of man is more representative of the workings of the divine than are the laws imposed by the collective in which man lives. The inherent question here is whether man can lay aside the authority of the Ten Commandments, which he believes to have been inspired in the heart of certain men and through their hands revealed to all mankind. Blake suggests that the creative man must, like Jesus, reinterpret the law in his individual way, and that the age of revelation did not end with the teachings of Jesus any more than it began with them. Blake, after this, I'm quoting from the essay of Leonard Cohen's Last Year's Man. I already talked about an essay which is comparing Leonard Cohen's Last Year's Man with William Blake's illustrations of the Book of Job. And this essay was written by C.B. Wilde. So we already put the link in one of our previous podcasts of this essay. And in this excerpt, the author of the essay said, Blake had what we would call a humanistic view of God. God only acts and is through existing beings and men. The Bible is as much the word of man as it is the word of God. It is divine in the sense that it is the work of the poetic imagination. The poetic imagination or the poetic genius is for Blake the essence of our humanity. It is also the essence of God. According to Blake, Christ was an artist, the poetic imagination in human form, and in order to be a Christian, it is necessary to be an artist, a poet, a painter, a musician, an architect. The man or woman who is one of these who is not one of these is not a Christian. Mere passive obedience to a set of rules or commandments is the worship of a noble daddy, the jealous, tyrannical God of organized religion. Sorry if I read too much, I don't know.
No, it's fine. Well, let's bring that to bear here on this note and just talk about this a little bit. We talked about how this angel embraced the flame of fire and came back as Elijah. I don't know if people are familiar with who Elijah was. He ascended. He had a special rapture event. Perhaps that's what you want to say. But in the book of Malachi prophesies that Elijah's return will happen before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. So he's kind of a harbinger of the Messiah and of the eschaton. So he's saying he came back as Elijah, but then he also is saying that he's a devil and they're friends now. And they're going to interpret the Bible in a diabolical way, which they're going to give to the world. And then they're also working on a Bible of hell, which the world is going to get whether they're good or not. This is insanity. This is insanity. This is total insanity, total blasphemy, total insanity. I don't know what to say. I mean, are you persuaded by the Satan's arguments, the devil's arguments about Jesus to come over to his side and become a devil and want to create these diabolical interpretations of the Bible and write a Bible of hell?
I think.
Did you find Blake's little devil persuasive? I didn't.
I think we just read the Bible of Hell. I think it is Blake's book.
Oh, that's an interesting take. Well, we have a little bit more to do, it's interesting. I talked to Sophie yesterday or 2 days ago. I was like, Sophie, I had a long week. I can only do the fifth memorable fancy. And I thought, okay, it's going to be short. Maybe we'll only talk for like a half hour. And this might be our longest one yet. I think we've been going for like an hour and 40 minutes. And we have left the Song of Liberty, which we'll cover next time, and the chorus, and then we're done. So I'm pretty much done. Do you have anything else that you want to say? I need to eat some lunch.
No, it's okay. We can end now. Uh, I think it was a very interesting and dense podcast. We had a lot of things to say, and as usual, we never have enough time to say everything that we
Well,
thought.
I actually think this might be one of the best ones. Like there was I I this was like one of the more philosophically interesting things that Blake tangled with. I just thought there was a lot more to this section than the other sections, in my opinion.
Yes,
But maybe that's just me.
yes, I think it was denser than the other chapters, but there were a lot of interesting things in the
Yeah.
previous
No,
ones as well. That's why
no, I
we are
just
taking so long to
yeah,
to study Blake's poem, because there are so many things to say.
it's true. It's true. All right. Well, I got to go eat some lunch. Sophie, I really appreciate you showing up today and doing this, and just we'll try to finish this out next time, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a great day or evening, depending on the time when you are listening to this. And I hope you have a good time and that you are learning things from us.
Good things. Good things. I yeah. Don't become a devil.
Yes, follow the 10 Commandments and you will be safe.
I would say follow the commandments that Jesus says, and you'll be all right. Okay, whatever. All right, over and out.